So, as y'all seen, this whole year, right? We started off with Microsoft laying off 1,900 due to the merger, and then Sony lays off 900, right, which is 8% of their workforce. Closed the studio. They even did layoffs for Insomniac, which is the wildest thing ever because they literally carried this generation so far. And then this week you had EA layoff 670 people. And them not continuing or doing licensed games anymore. I'm seeing a trend here, right? So like the first person shooter Mandalorian game that Respawn was doing, canceled, gone,
missed.
And I don't even know what that's like to have a license like that with the contract and then deciding to cancel it and what that cost them or what, you know what I mean? And then so they're going to stick to their original IPs and sports games. Then you got 505 Games losing 30% of their workforce. Saber bounced out of Embracer, thank God, but they're the ones doing the KOTOR remake. So they got purchased. Do y'all remember what the price tag was? It was like 500 million or something.
Yeah, 500 mil.
Yeah. And then Toys for Bob is going to go independent as well with a Microsoft partnership potentially. So they're getting out of the wing from Activision Blizzard. That's a lot, and it's February.
Yep.
What is happening? Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, it's like over hiring from COVID. Yeah, but like, no, you know what I mean? Like there's something going on. Like budgets are getting crazy with these games. From what I'm seeing, from those leaks and the Insomniac leaks and seeing what those royalty fees look like from Disney, crazy. Is the juice worth the squeeze at that point? You know what I mean? Right. And then you have Saber moving out, Toys for Bob moving out. Like the Toys for Bob one is kind of weird to me. Like maybe they just didn't want to, because they were like helping with Call of Duty and stuff like that. They weren't really able to do what they wanted to do, right? And maybe Microsoft saw them as like the juice isn't worth the squeeze for those smaller games because you're not going to get your bang for your buck, like doing all these resources. So it's probably better for them to be on their own and we collab with them on certain projects, right? That way we don't have to do the marketing for it. We don't have to do the management for that studio, blah, 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 or whatever, right? It's just contracted out. But I'm going to start with you, Fuzzy. What the fuck is happening?
I think it's a mixture of a lot of things, but the one thing that always grabbed my attention at the beginning of this generation was the price hike on games. And I know some people will be like, oh, it's no big deal that they went up another $10 from the previous gen. But I remember there was a debate as far as like games that are $70 and how well they sell. And I think just with the exception of maybe Call of Duty, it's one of the few, but it still has a like cross-gen component that's selling for 60. Right. So there's still a decent number of those that are selling at 60. But I don't think there's been a $70 game that's only $70 that sold 10 million handedly without having either bundles. Because, I know some people are going to say, well, PlayStation's done it. Yeah, with bundles. And some of those bundles, especially like with Spider-Man 2, Marvel gets a bigger cut. Hence why, Insomniac's having to let people go. So I think this whole extra $10 thing was like that threshold too far. Like, and I know some people are fine with paying 70 and that's great. But when you're looking to, continue having this mass amount of sales and you do that extra 10, you may put more money in your pocket per sale, but you're going to get less sales. Like we're not seeing that many titles reach that 20 mil mark like we used to. Like some games before, like just this, previous generation, or even like things like Elden Ring didn't sell for 70, it sold for 60, and that reached the 20 mil. And the same thing with Hogwarts. So it's like maybe that's part of it. The other part of it is obviously these budgets, which I know, it was mentioned before where there's a lot of people that work in the industry that are out in places where the cost of living is through the roof. Like living in California is not cheap.
Nope.
And if you have a lot of dev studios out there where you could make six figures and still almost be living on the street out there. So it's like, you got to look at where these games are made. And I'm not saying, hey, move all the development to like, Kentucky or something like that, where maybe the cost of living is a lot less. But I think that's what some of these teams need to look at in the long term, or just make it where, maybe it's a smaller footprint as far as the studios that's in California. And then you have, sub studios or other portions, sprinkled throughout either the world or somewhere else in the country, just where, you're not having to pay, these high six-figure salaries all congested in one area. I mean, sure, all the talent's located in some of those areas, but that's the thing that's kind of pricing itself out of the market. So it's like budgeting has to be taken into account, the actual cost for the games, the marketing aspect, which, putting things on buses and all that stuff may seem cool to us, but, in a grand scheme of things, putting something on like a basketball court or advertising it for a Super Bowl might be some of the things that they could possibly skip, considering how popular streaming TV is nowadays. But it's hard to say, but I honestly, there's like two, I guess you could say, light spots to kind of keep an eye on. Although one of them recently didn't do as well as they probably hoped, but it did well enough to keep the lights on. And that was with Remedy for Alan Wake 2. Smaller studio, smaller budget, and it sold well, but not as well as they probably would hope for, like something that is in the AAA space. But it wasn't like a $300 million, project type of deal.
Right.
And they were able to make their money back and then some, but maybe it's not the profit margin, a Microsoft or a Sony would want from that type of investment, but it's enough to keep them going and keep them moving on to the next project. And then the next big one is going to be with Ninja Theory with Hellblade 2. A smaller studio, smaller budget, and they're doing a lot of stuff in-house as far as they're either creating the tools or getting the tools, and then building upon what they have in-house. So it's not like they're renting facilities for these motion captures or going all out on motion capture. They're doing motion capture, but it's a lot of it is stuff that they've learned over the years to kind of, finite what they need and what they don't need, and, focus those efforts accordingly. With them not, having it where it's a $300 million budget. I think the first one was like under a $20 million budget or something like that, and it made its money back and then some. I think this one might be hovering around a $50 million budget. We'll see. Yes, it's a smaller experience. It's not going to be like your 40 or 60 hour game. It's geared to be less than 20 hours and stuff. But I think that might be the step moving forward, where these teams need to, kind of scale things to say, okay, we got 50 million. That's all we can spend. And if it means it's an 8 hour or 20 hour experience, so be it. And then we'll be able to put whatever we make in profit into the next 20 hour experience, and, keep the lights on, keep everybody paid, and, keep the team whole. So that way you don't have to say, oh, well, we finished the project, we got to let 10% go, or we got to let, 8% go, or whatever the case is. So a lot of them got to start crunching numbers a little bit differently. And like, I don't know how Ubisoft does what they do, considering they make like these 100-hour experiences, and now they're charging $70, full price for something that should have been like a free to play in a way. So it'll be curious to see how that pans out. But I think there needs to be some scaling back, but I don't know. It's going to be tough for a bit. I think there's going to be some more breakouts, like your Hell Divers, your Power Worlds, where that sweet spot of $30 or $40 for a game, I think is going to be the new, I wouldn't say the new norm, but that might be the target. Like, focus on some of those, focus less on the AAA, $200, $300 million stuff. Maybe, 100 million, 150 million for a smaller version of that AAA and go with that, and then do offshoots or do follow-up sequels, kind of like the way Miles Morales was to Spider-Man, or the way I guess Venom will be to Spider-Man 2, and have it where it's more of an offshoot or something along those lines, or have like with Halo Infinite. I know they canceled like some of the story DLC, but maybe make that story DLC more of like a episodic type of thing. That way you don't have to necessarily do the next Halo at 500 mil. You do a couple of them that are at the 50 to 100 mil range, and you have stuff that will keep your customer base and players happy for 2-3 years in between, like the bigger installments and things like that. So
No, I
we'll see.
100% agree. I actually had a tweet. Was it yesterday? Let me read y'all some statistics. Like from 2010 to now, right? Console growth is stagnant. So you're still dealing with the same amount of customers, right? Game prices are up only 16%. Okay. US, I just did US, annual salary is up 35%, but that doesn't cause for it because the price of everything's gone up like crazy, right? Studio budgets up 150 to 337%.
300. It's crazy.
The math ain't mathing. The game, and that's why, and I harp on this all the time, you see people scrambling to put their games on more devices because you need another consumer base, right? You saw Sony's going to go hard to the PC market soon, right? Square Enix is getting away from just being on one platform, right? Nintendo's the only one that can be Nintendoing. You know what I mean?
Only one.
Right? Like their games don't cost that much. They probably still cost around the same from 2010. Right? Yeah. And then there's games don't go on sale. Like it's all the same. It's just the same, man. And they probably had more growth within their little section since 2010 with the Switch or whatever. Because how much has the Switch sold? It's almost surpassed PS2 levels, right?
140 so far.
Jesus.
And they have another year and a half, and then they'll probably keep selling it after the new one comes out. So they will likely beat the PS2, which is 155.
Oh yeah, they got that. Yeah. Especially when a newer game comes out and it's going to look better on the OLED. So those that didn't upgrade to the OLED yet, they'll probably do that.
Dude, I've had 3 Switches. Really? And a Switch Lite. Yeah, but I've had 3 of them. That's what I'm saying. They got their money from me.
Sure. They did. God damn it. You messed up, Jigga J. You 1 cent off. I'm just kidding. He said Jigga J with the 20. I appreciate it, fam. He said for the horn hub time. What's that horn action? Here we go. All right. Iron lungs on that one.
Yo, he was feeling himself on that one. You see how long he went? He said
Valhalla felt that one, boy. The Bifrost is shaking right now.
You stupid.
All right, man. But yeah, like that. Yeah, nothing's adding up right now, and I think a lot of these studios are realizing that, man. What do you say, Hargeet?
Boy, do I have things to say about this. Okay, so a couple of years back, I put out a video on my channel called "Is Graphical Fidelity Killing Gaming or Ruining Gaming?" And I think it is. Look, the headache you run into, like Microsoft did a whole bunch of bold things to come out of the mess they put themselves in when they launched the Xbox One. Before that, though, the PS3 did the same thing. PS3 came out, put themselves in a bad position, and they had to do some bold things. Their choice was to go make these cinematic games. Cool. it's one path to go. They kept doing that, but they also recognized, at least a couple of their CEOs, and Sean said this, that look, it's not sustainable, right? If we keep doing this, we keep making it more and more and more and more expensive, we just won't make the money back.
Right.
The rest of the industry said, well, shit, now we got to keep up with them. And so they started making their games like that. And then everybody looked to Xbox to say, well, why aren't your games looking like that? So, yeah, but like our games do well. We don't need to like do that. But okay, fine, if that's what you want, right? Ultimately, this path it's not going to work. It's you have to make games that will sell so many copies to make the money back that it just becomes unsustainable to have anything but the same exact bloody game that you hope will always. It's just like the Marvel effect, right? You have to make the same freaking movies or you just won't make your money back. And even that, at some point, just people get tired. I don't want to watch this over and over again. Come on. Right. And so, like, this problem was going to happen, right? There's another major thing that happened is gaming became so big. And when things become so big money starts coming in with big investors who want big returns. And they don't care how it happens. They don't care how the sausage is made. They just want the freaking returns. Well, that's a problem because now people started making too many games. So they all wanted to have like 100 freaking AAA games. How many of those games can you play? Like you're saying, the math ain't mathin'. The math ain't mathin' on how many games you can actually play within a given time frame. It used to be we would get like 3-4 big games a year, and we're like, oh, that's awesome. Now you get 3-4 big games a month. How do you do that?
It's a good problem.
You just don't.
It is a good problem.
You just don't. It's a great problem from one perspective. It's a horrible problem from a sales perspective.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where they are. Right? You take Prince of Persia. Great game. Didn't go anywhere. That's a massive flop. Right? And you take this pivot to games as a service, live game stuff like Suicide Squad, like Anthem. You can go on and on down the list. Massive fails. Like that can't be sustained. Square Enix has had fail after fail after fail after fail after fail. How long can that keep going? Right? This is the problem the industry's in. This is going to happen. We were going to have a crash at some point. We are in a AAA crash. We're not necessarily in an everything crash, but we are in a AAA crash. And we have to figure out, the industry has to figure out how to make this work. And that's basically where we're at now. So the Sony model, even Sony recognized, is not going to work. So they have to slow that down, like you were saying, Fuzzy. They can't keep making games like this. You have to slow it down, come up with different experiences at different price points, and try to make money off of it. Right? Hellblade isn't going to cost that much because, well, they didn't spend that much. Right? But it is a AA experience, and then who cares? It's good enough. You have to just make games like that and put them out there. Right? It's not going to be far off from the number of hours of Spider-Man 2. And Spider-Man 2 cost how much more? Like 10 times as much? Not to mention the marketing, not to mention you have to pay royalties in the 20 to 50% range. That's just insane. How do you make that back? You notice EA came up and said, we're done. We're not doing those games anymore. We're done. Because it just costs too much. Right? And so, like, okay, that's one studio saying it's done. Ubisoft hasn't done their layoffs. You think they're not going to have them? How did that Avatar game do? Did it do well? No.
Skull and Bones?
Skull and Bones? Flop.
The quadruple A game?
God,
after how many years? 8 years, 10 years, 15 years, however long it took.
10 years, yeah.
To play Battleship, man. No.
You barely even get off the ship.
Barely.
I mean, sadly, you should just expect it. It's going to happen. They're going to have to deal with their quarterly report, and they're going to see their fall lineup sucked. And so there's going to be layoffs. It's just the way it is. This is unfortunate, but it was going to happen. There was also the COVID bump. A lot of people at home wanted to play games, wanted consumption. It's like, give me more games, give me more games. Well, yeah, that kind of like fizzled when people could go outside and do stuff.
People were getting stimmy checks too, so they had money to burn too. So a lot of those numbers were probably overinflated for those sales numbers for most of those games because people could just buy it.
So ultimately, this idea of making games where like every blade of grass has to move and all that stuff, that's people time. That's a lot of wasted time. Now, good, maybe AI can help some of that, but honestly, does it matter? Does it really matter? Like, it'd be better to just give you the game, the story. It looks good enough. right? And it doesn't take 8 years to give you a game. If you could have the same game in 2.5 to 3 years, is that better? It costs way less, right? This is a thing that people have to like grasp. The next generations, by the way, don't give a shit. They're coming up saying, Minecraft is good. Roblox is good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you just have to take that for what it is. And thank God they're saying that, because really that's what we need. We need more PAL worlds.
Yeah.
That game doesn't look like it's a stellar, graphical experience. Who cares? $7 million,
Brotato,
25 million players.
Yeah.
Exactly. Vampire Survivors.
Yeah.
Right. It's perfectly fine. We have to be more, accepting of those kind of games than, like the guy getting out of the boat in God of War doesn't look right. Like, seriously, somebody actually paid attention to that. Like, really, that's something you have to care about. This is the kind of pettiness that says, oh no, we have to fix that animation. That's like 3 to 6 months of somebody's work. Why? But that's what we're at, right? And I blame Sony for this, because they had to do a bold move, and that's the move they made, and they pushed the industry in this direction, right? Is it cool to have good graphics? Yes. Not at the expense of gameplay, not at the expense of the studios, because that's where we are. That's where we are right now. A lot of these studios are going to fail. A lot of these studios are going to go away. It's just the way it is. We've made it so hellish for these people to make these games so that they can deliver within a shorter period of time. I don't think it's worth it. I think this needs to scale back. I think a Hellblade at 6 hours, fine. That's good. I don't need more than that. That's fine. Right? Make more of those. Don't go nuts. Everything doesn't have to look like it's a movie. If I wanted to watch a movie, I have this thing called a Blu-ray. I have this thing called Netflix. I can just go watch a movie. I don't need to do that in my gaming. The best company for gaming is Nintendo. Why? Because they don't give a shit about any of that stuff. They give you games that play like games. That's it. They just give you games that play like games. They're fun games. That's what you need to do. But anyway, I think this was bound to happen. It's unfortunate. This is very unfortunate, right? And I think we've now eclipsed about what we did last year in the first 2 months in layoffs. Yep. It's going to get worse. This is just the beginning. It's going to get worse. We have some other big ones to still come. So we're going to have more. It's just unfortunately the way it is. I expect the next 4 months it's going to be like this. And hopefully it stabilizes.
Do you think it would be easier for them to manage budgets and expectations if they get rid of because right now a lot of things like are in the sales model, like how many did it sell, opposed to kind of like what GeForce Now or EA, Ubisoft, they have their in Xbox with Game Pass, they have their subscription services to where they can manage those budgets, keep those studios healthy while having a steady flow of income coming in. You think that is helpful?
So, was it Ubisoft? One of them actually mentioned this, that people have to get used to the idea of subscriptions.
Right. Ubisoft, yep.
People aren't ready for it. That's the problem. Ubisoft Plus, how many subscribers do you think they have? It was like 1 million. That's it.
Well, yeah, because
right?
and it's too high for what it offers.
Maybe. I mean, to me, it seems valuable enough, but it is what it is. People won't subscribe. And you do the same thing with EA. How many people do you think subscribe to that one? And it's just not enough. Like, they need to have a sustained 10, 15, 20 million subscribers. Then it absolutely is fine. Right? Microsoft is in a very good position with the 33 million, well, let's say 28 million of the actual Game Pass subscribers, which is fantastic. That gives them a lot of revenue, right? Now, their problem is more, they went and bought ABK and they have to put Call of Duty into Game Pass, which is a lot of revenue loss that they have to absorb, right? Which brings you to the thing of Toys for Bob, which I'm very disappointed with, which means that they've switched away from, we're going to have quirky small games, which also tells you why they took Grounded, Hi-Fi Rush, Pentiment, and put those on other platforms. They're not going to do those games anymore. That's basically what that means, because Call of Duty basically ate up the budget for making all those smaller games. Now, I'm very, very disappointed in that. But if that's really the case, because that's what it looks like, then we will only be getting these big AAA games, which I don't think is the way I want it either. No. I would prefer to have Double Fine games. I would prefer to have Groundeds. I would like those kind of games. They give you filler. They give you things to do while you're waiting for Fable to come out. right? You can spend a lot of time in a Grounded. Why not? That's cool. You can spend a lot of time in a Sea of Thieves. Again, I think this is a bad move, but it's the move they're making, and they're saying, hey, maybe we'll make enough money on these other platforms, and so I can get another Hi-Fi Rush.
Right.
I don't know if it's going to work. I liked Game Pass giving me that blanket, right? It's paid for. Go ahead, studio, make whatever quirky game you want. Cool, right? They're now following the Sony model, which I don't want. I don't want all big, AAA games. I think it's much better to have smaller games, because then you get gems that you never thought you ever wanted to play.
That's true.
Right? I had no idea I wanted to play Pentiment. I know a lot of people hated that game, but man, was that a crazy story. I couldn't finish. Like, I had to keep playing it. I was like, what the freak is going on here? So I just played and finished it. Like, it's just so nuts. Not a lot of people like it, but for those who it resonated with, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
I would love to see more of those. I don't think we're going to see more of those. So this is unfortunately where we are. I'd prefer more of those but people don't buy those games, right? But that was why freaking Game Pass was so awesome, because it funded those kind of things.
Right.
I don't think we're going to fund those kind of things, because now it has to pay for Diablo. It has to pay for Call of Duty. And I hate that. I'd rather pay for Call of Duty and let me get the quirky games. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people hate that idea. I know a lot of people want Call of Duty and Game Pass, but frankly, that's a multiplayer game. Go buy your stupid Call of Duty. Most of the people who are going to play that game are going to buy their $70 game and play nothing else. Good. Go pay your $70. I'd rather get next Pentiment, Hi-Fi Rush, Grounded. I'd love to get those. I don't know what's going to happen. And I like the industry is in a really weird place. And I hope the right lessons are learned and not the wrong lessons. And so I hope the AAA games, they come down a bit. Like, budgets should be like capped at 100 million or 70 million. Say, oh, if you need to go beyond this, we have to have a conversation as to why, right? And start making games more profitable, right? Instead of ridiculous. Like, no, the trees don't all have to have every single leaf be individually moving around. Who gives a crap? Honestly, it's a tree in the background 300 feet away. Let it go. It doesn't matter. Seriously, people have gone crazy about these things. It needs to stop. All of that costs money, and it's costing all those companies the ability to sustain themselves. Every single one of them. EA is laying people off. Ubisoft's coming up. I don't know if Take-Two gets away with it, but don't be surprised when all these big publishers are having layoffs. So
Sony got hit after the release of probably GTA 6, but probably not before.
That would be next year, though, right? So we will see.
Probably after the release,
Nintendo seems to be insulated from this, but again, they're now doing lawsuits for a reason. Don't be surprised if there happen to be layoffs there too. Okay, everybody's getting hit. They have a year where they were expecting to launch a whole bunch of games in a console, and they won't. That could be a financial hit for them, and they still have to sustain their business. So they happen to have massive profit line, so it could be fine that they just squeeze that down and they're okay. Maybe they will be, but don't be shocked if they turn around and do the same thing. So hopefully they don't. Hopefully they don't. Historically, they try not to. But again, don't be shocked if it happens. This is unfortunately where we are. It just it sucks, but it is what it is.
Confusing times for sure. Scale, what'd you say, man?
I'll keep it kind of short because I know we're coming up on time. I really agree with Hargeet as far as the games are too cinematic. Way too, they look too good and it's costing too much money. So therefore, after it doesn't do well, it's just an L. So, but I'm gonna just keep it short. Layoffs are obviously happen all across the board. Everybody's getting hit. So it's just the time we're in where I think the gaming industry just spent too much money. And AI is coming in. I swear, I don't care. I think AI has something to do with it. Sorry. It is what it is. Hey, it's coming in. And you see what Microsoft has made another deal. You know what I'm saying? So, I think just spending too much money, man. I really, really agree with Ari with the cinematic, man. I remember, he said how PlayStation started out going cinematic. I remember when Killzone 2 trailer dropped, that was looking like the best game I've ever seen in my life, literally. I was like, this is going to be crazy. It didn't look like that when it came out, but that's what they were going for, was to have the most cinematic feel. And I think they were pushing Blu-ray as well, so they wanted that to be their thing, is cinematic. So kind of now we're all in the phase of wanting hyper cinematic things. It's cost us too much money when they don't sell well. And if 300 million ain't gonna work, period. I don't think you're ever gonna get that back. Like, and these boys want their ROIs. I promise. That we've talked about on the Longhouse plenty of times. That ROI is not a joke at all. So yeah, I'm gonna just keep it short. And I'll say one more thing. I think EA personally is just trying to become a sports company. I think they're just going to do sport games. They're done with everything else. They say, you know what? We make so much money off packs and microtransactions. Why would we do anything else? Why? So EA been getting on my nerves for a while. Jedi Survivor and Dead Space are good games. Like, though, I actually enjoy those. So the fact that they stopped with the Mandalorian style, I was like, bruh, y'all are losing me. Like, I don't want to play y'all sports games.
And they have that Apex, right? That just generates money. It's like they're going to look for those live games. That's what it is.
Yeah. It's the original IPs. Like, I think a lot of people are going to start dropping these licenses from other companies to make games for them, because Disney's probably gotten way too greedy to get money back. Like 300 million to make a game, plus you have the license to make the game and you have to pay all these royalties. Like, you'd be lucky to get into black, but as a company, are you just looking to get into black, or you want to get into green? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not looking just to make the same, make my money back. I need more. You know what I mean? And a 6% ROI for something over a period of 5 to 6 years is not good. You know what I mean? Like, if I give you $100 today, Cam, and I was like, all right, you owe me whatever, and then you come back with 106 6 years later, I'm like, nah, blood.
All right, wait, bro, the law money is different.
Which is a loss. Which is a loss because of inflation. Because of inflation.
Yep.
That's already a loss.
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Straight up.
At all.
It's not.
Yeah. What about you, Nova, man? What you think about all this going down?
Man, I think that they are going to be dropping these IPs, but I feel like these companies they do see it coming, right? So the Epic partnership with Disney, to bring some of so they're trying to look for other ways to bring their IPs to the consumer in a gaming kind of way. But all of these layoffs, they suck, man. We're only 2 months into the year, almost 3, and thousands of people have lost their livelihood. And first and foremost, that is a terrible thing right there, right?
Right.
And way less important is we are losing out on some of these games. That Mandalorian game does sound like it would have been a pretty cool game, man. And it's just unfortunate, because if a company is doing bad, the easiest thing to do is just kind of reduce operating costs by just laying people off, man. You don't have to pay them anymore, and that's a lot of money saved. And but to Hargeet's point about like graphic fidelity potentially killing gaming, he may be onto something there, man. I never really thought about that. I do enjoy the games that give me that, like Final Fantasy VII. I was playing that today. It looks amazing, but I guarantee you they spent millions upon millions and countless hours on that game, man. And everybody can't do that. Everybody can't sustain that. And Nintendo definitely, they knew this from a long time ago, man. Nintendo been said, if you guys are going to do the fidelity thing, fine. We can be on the same highway, but on, in our own lane. So they decided to do it totally different, man. But yeah, we may get to a place to where EA is only making sports games, like Skell said, and I think that EA is totally fine with that, man. Like, it's print money, so why not? And it works
every year.
Risk.
Plus, they got and the new college football game coming out too, so that's going to print money as well.
Yeah, no risk.
And every game has microtransactions as well. All of them. How all your games have microtransactions, and they all sell on there. It's
sad, but like Immortals of Avium came out and they didn't have those. They didn't have microtransactions, but it flopped.
Yeah, I guess that's what sells is microtransactions.
Yeah, like, they said what sells is what's already out. They said we're not taking no more risks, bro. Like this is what it is.
if they
and
had
all
cut
of
that budget down, maybe make it 40 million instead of 120 million, it might have made its
Yep.
money back.
Yep.
Yep.
Right. And then you put it in subservice, it's going to go to EA Play, right? And it's going to end up on Game Pass. Like, maybe it makes some
Yeah.
money back. I mean, like,
Diversify
That's a
your
lucky
investment, gaming companies.
Gotta do it.
Yeah. One thing you mentioned layoffs, like to decrease operating costs, right? Usually when you hear the layoff news, when you look at the stock market, your stock bounces back up, right? Like it usually kind of skyrockets sometimes, right? Because bro, when Sony did it, it didn't do shit. Sony laid off those 900 people. Like there's probably something really going on. Oh, first of all, they lost 10 billion of stock evaluation because of Q3, right? And they saw the return on investment. Second, all their studios do these big cinematic games, and that's what PlayStation is known for, right? And then on top of that, now they're potentially getting sued for another 10 billion. The deal that they had with was it an India company? ZTV fell through, so they probably have to pay some sort of breakup fee for that. I'm not sure. I didn't read into that.
Yeah,
But
they
like,
get taxed.
I'm
but
sure.
holy shit, man! Like, and then like, what else is Sony like really like? They sell TVs. PlayStation's kind of their thing, right? Like,
well, they have the movie division, they have the
have the
music
movie
division, right?
but
Madam
Web,
Web.
Madam Web didn't do good,
Which was a fail.
right?
We saw that from the
Um,
beginning.
yeah.
Come
You
on,
know.
man.
Like,
Now, look, the other problem is if you look at their business as far as the PlayStation, they've come out and said they have no big games coming out at least for a year,
yeah,
probably 2. So, like, you have to look at that from an investment perspective and say, why should I invest in you? I'll come back to you when you have something to sell, right?
Yeah.
And you just made a flip. If you look at that from an internals perspective, you were doing a whole bunch of games as a service games that you just canceled.
Yeah.
Well, what are those studios making then? So that means
Right.
you're starting again. When are they going to release a game?
another 4 to 5 years of development,
Right? So
Maybe with
they have like 2 to 3 years of like nothing, like nothing. So what do you
Yeah.
expect to do? And like the idea of money hatting, that's going to dry up. Most of those publishers are saying, I need money. Sony, you ain't enough. And they're not going to keep making these deals with them. They're going to put their game everywhere because they just want to sell as much as they can. I don't think they're going to get those money hats anymore. You might get small indies. Okay, you get baby steps. Is that going to do anything for you? No. Like I'm just being honest. I don't know what they're going to do. Like their catalog is broken for the next few years.
Yeah,
that's
the next baby
that's
steps
just
gonna
a
have
fact.
microtransactions too. I'm sure.
Every step costs you 20 cents.
Yeah, and it was really weird that they money hatted Square Enix Foam Stars and thought it was just good enough just to have it on PlayStation and not release it on PC, which was wild to me.
Yeah, or Switch, which is where it'll actually do something.
Right. Like
But
absolutely
anyway,
wild to me.
I don't even think that game will run on the Switch, to be honest. So crazy.
I mean, they got Hogwarts running on the Switch, right? So they can scale it back. I mean, but like that game, it has a different audience. I think it would do well on Switch. I think it actually work.
It has the look. Well, I think it would. I'd have to compete with Splatoon though. That'd be the biggest.
Yeah, but that's okay. Like it, like, and I don't know if Nintendo would say no, but because look, Mario is theirs, and they put Sonic on there. Sonic is on Switch.
They used to beef too. So crazy.
Yeah, so,
Nintendo don't.
Yeah. Like I don't know, man. But like PlayStation, I don't know what they're looking pretty weak, and you don't get Hiroki Totoki running around that you guys don't know how to make money to their studios for nothing, right? Like that's where they are. They're in trouble.
And they're supposed to be releasing new hardware here soon too.
Right, which is another boondoggle on their neck.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it's absolutely wild. Like, and then like the future is going to be services for sure, right?
Yeah.
Hardware and services, and they are way behind when it comes to services. Like way behind. Yeah, because I think,
and I mean Nintendo's behind them, but Nintendo's Nintendo.
Right, right.
Nintendo.
Yeah, 100%.